So this is going to be for the respiratory system, and so you want to keep in mind two sections, upper respiratory tract and lower respiratory tract. From the nasal passage to the larynx, that is considered upper respiratory tract, and that's the first breakdown. Then we have the lower respiratory tract, which is going to be a little bit further down the line. So starting with the upper respiratory tract, you'll notice that first we're going to have to deal with cavities or passageways to get oxygen to those lungs. So let's start with those structures first. That if we're looking at our model, first thing we have to analyze is this region here, because this is the region that's going to conduct air and bring it into the larynx and then bring it into the lungs. So breaking that part down, if we look at our model, here we have our half-head model, and here you can see the nasal concha. These are going to help increase the turbulence of air as it's passaging inside into your nose, and this whole segment is your nasal cavity. And so again, the nasal concha can be found within the nasal cavity. Now, in the back, you'll notice that you have what we normally just call the throat, but this region, the throat, is going to be posterior, and gas, as it enters, oxygen, it wants to enter and go into the larynx. It doesn't care about the esophagus because the esophagus is for food, the larynx is for oxygen. And so air comes in and goes into your larynx. And so some of this pharynx here has some particular names to it by the regions that it's next to. So for example, this region up here, this back part of your throat here, that's next to the nasal cavity is called nasopharynx. The part of the pharynx that's in front of the oral cavity is the oropharynx. And then here you can see this is where our larynx is, so this is going to be called laryngopharynx. Okay, that's going to be the region behind. And again, this is going to be a passageway to conduct both air from the nasal cavity or to conduct food from the mouth, oral cavity, into the esophagus, but that's a topic for digestion. So the next video you're going to want to look at is going to be a breakdown of what exactly is this larynx made of. And when you look at it in this model, you can see here's our epiglottis, here's our vocal cords and vocal folds. Vocal cords are going to be the one on the inside, very, very inside, and the one on the outside is going to be vocal folds. Here you can see your thyroid cartilage is going to be this large one because it's next to a gland called the thyroid gland. And so now we have to adjust our eyes to this model here because this is the same thing. You'll notice here you have your vocal folds and your vestibular folds that make up your vocal cords. These are your vocal cords. This is your epiglottis, which prevents things from entering in here. If it's food, it makes sure that the food goes in its esophagus, not into the larynx. And so you can see here is going to be our thyroid cartilage, is going to be the larger one. And then the smaller one there is going to be cricoid cartilage. And then finally we arrive at our trachea, which is going to have those what we refer to as C rings because they only envelop like a C. And so that's going to be the beginning of our trachea here after when these C rings begin. The next thing to address is, well, the last thing actually, and then last word we have here is our glottis. And so when you imagine the entrance into this larynx, the glottis is the opening. So glottis, and then just this blue portion is the epiglottis. So the opening is a glottis. And that's really it for the upper respiratory tract.